welcome to Moments with Marianne. I am so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have just a special show coming right up. So our guest today is John Feal of the Feel Good Foundation and Joe Sabia, a retired firefighter who was a first responder in 9/11, and now he's a restaurant owner of Pino's in Castle Rock, Colorado. So John and Joe are here today to talk to us about the Feel Good Foundation and No Responder Left Behind. So let's welcome to the show John and Joe.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so truly honored to spend this time with the both of you. Now, I met Joe the other night at his fabulous restaurant Pino's in Castle Pines, Colorado. And that's where I was introduced to John's foundation, the Feel Good Foundation, and all the wonderful work they're doing regarding legislation, awareness, and continuing the discussion of our care for our first responders from 9/11. And there's quite a bit I was not aware of, and it was just heartbreaking to learn of what's going on. So why don't you each take a moment and just share your story with us. And gosh, Joe, why don't we start with you? How did you become connected with John?
Well, John and I grew up together. Just coincidentally, we went to high school together. We grew up together. We goofed around together, and we had many years of a lot of fun. But like many people, we went our separate ways after high school. But then suddenly 9/11 happened. I was a first responder and firefighter on that day. And John, I believe you were an iron worker, correct? And now we're connected again and fighting for a lot of first responders that are significantly ill from that day.
And so, Joe, when you talk about being a first responder on 9/11, and then you got the call to come and help out during 9/11.
Yeah, that's correct. FDNY, the city fire department, one of the big chiefs there contacted my fire department out on Long Island looking for some help because he had lost a lot of people, specifically the rescue companies of New York City. And at that time, I was rescue qualified and had and responded in with our heavy rescue rig. Those are the big trucks with all the technical equipment to do confined space rescue type stuff.
Mm-hmm. And so you were there and helping out, and then so you and John had been kind of back in touch. And John, you were an iron worker, is that correct?
Oh, close enough. I was a supervisor in a demolition company.
That's kind of a little different.
Yeah, well, you deal with steel. But, before I go any further, my story pales in comparison to why we're on this phone. And it's great that Joe reached out to me, and I love that plug that he gave for his restaurant, and I hope everybody goes to Joe's restaurant. Moving forward, I was horribly injured during the cleanup and the recovery at Ground Zero. Before everybody got sick and denied benefits, I spent 11 weeks in the hospital with gangrene and lost half of my left foot. I was raised, and Joe will tell you this, in high school, I never backed down from a fight. And my mother raised me, if I believed in something, to fight. And I think that's what I've been doing ever since 9/11, and not just for myself. It was tens of thousands of other people, and it's not just those from New York. It's from people all over the country that came to New York during the cleanup and the recovery that took 10 months. And while the uniformed first responder, the cops, the firefighters, and the EMS did God's work, it was the army of non-uniformed workers, the volunteers, the paid volunteers, and those that came from 433 out of 435 congressional districts that really cleaned up lower Manhattan. But many of them got sick, and many of them have passed away. The toxins that we inhaled through the nose, mouth, and skin has made these men and women, uniform and non-uniform, deathly ill, and many have passed away from that. And our job at the Feal Foundation is to ensure, to let people know that there is a World Trade Center health program now where they can get free health care. And once their illnesses are certified under the James Droga Health and Compensation Act, a bill that we got passed in Congress, they have 2 years to file a claim where they can get compensated. But like any government-run program, workman's comp, Social Security, pensions, whatever the case may be, people fall through the cracks. So since 2005, when I started the foundation, I've donated close to $5 million now to put food on people's tables, to pay for their gas, to get the chemotherapy appointments, to pay their mortgages, pay their rents. While it sounds like a lot, it's not enough. But we've also helped pass 9 pieces of important legislation in Washington, D.C., in Albany, and even in Michigan that helped firefighters with a cancer prevention bill. So, and the beauty of it is I do it all for free.
Well, and I'm going to touch on something you talked about a little bit. So a lot of times people think of 9/11, they think of the first responders, who were there and doing God's work. A lot of times they don't even consider people who were responders to that tragedy.
Correct.
Yeah, it's a difference. It's you've got the men and women in uniform and the people who, like you were saying, who showed up that were providing meals or maybe having to work in that area. I mean, is there any other kind of qualifications for someone that would be considered a responder, maybe someone that had been exposed?
Well, the James Droga Health and Compensation Act is part healthcare and part compensation. So there's a geographic map that is quite similar under the healthcare program and the VCF, but they're a little different. And they're a little different for the people that live in lower Manhattan compared to the 9/11 first responder or 9/11 responder/volunteer. So they can all go to these websites, and they're on my website at fealgoodfoundation.com. But again, 433 out of 435 congressional districts were represented at Ground Zero. Over 300 people came from the state of Colorado. We were there last October. We put 30 people in the program, and a handful of them had cancer, and they didn't know why they had cancer. So many people went to Ground Zero during the cleanup and the recovery, then went home and said, "Why, honey, why am I sick?" And now this program is in place nationally. So in New York, you have centers of excellence that treat these men and women on a daily basis. And across the country, you have the National 9/11 program where they will find a doctor nearest your hometown that specializes in these environmental diseases, and there's a satellite hookup for these doctors to talk to the doctors in New York, and they can get the help that they need.
Yeah, I was so shocked when I was at Joe's lovely restaurant Pino's in Castle Pines area, Castle Rock area in Colorado. He was doing a fundraiser for the Feel Good Foundation, and just to hear of what the good work that you guys are doing, and just this whole group of people that we're just not aware of that are needing additional help and additional support, and for us to really fight for them like they were fighting for, us during 9/11 and the cleanup and being there. I mean, I was just shocked. I was absolutely shocked, and it just really makes you feel good that people like Joe are also helping to be part of what you're doing there, John.
Well, listen, again, I can't thank Joe enough, and Joe, if you don't get embarrassed, I'll tell you how much you actually raised. Joe helped us raise a little over $11,000.
Oh, that's great.
And that was with and there was and I'll tell you why it went to 11,000, because it was a little over 6,000 until yesterday when we got a check from the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, and the people from that foundation were at Joe's restaurant, and so they sent a $5,000 check. So again, thank you to Joe for that, and thank you for everybody who helped contribute. And while the donations are great and much appreciated, and it's going to help a lot of people, it's more about disseminating the information for me. It's always been about getting the information out. for the last 12, 13 years of doing this, I never solicited donations. I never asked anybody to donate. I never sent something in the mail and said donate to us. I never made a cold call and said donate. But I sold a T-shirt and a sweatshirt in every state and in about 12 countries that I'm really never ever going to step foot in. But when they wear that shirt, they get that information. And it's all about disseminating the information that there are people all over the United States in our great nation that are sick and dying from their heroic actions, and we want to help them. And that's what it is. That's all I care about.
I hear that loud and clear. In fact, before we started, we were kind of chatting a little bit earlier. You were talking about how many responders we are losing, like every few days. And
every 3.2 days on average, we lose a 9/11 responder. Last week was 6 and 4 days. I count,
I remember that.
and I have a morbid. It's perverse actually, of tracking these passings, and every passing a piece of me dies with them. But we put
I get these. I'm sorry, John, I want to interrupt for 1 second. So this is what keeps me so connected to it, what John's doing. He passes these messages on to all the first responders and all the people connected to him on Facebook, and it blows me away. It feels like every day. He says it's every 3 days. It really does feel like every day. Last week, I recall vividly, two a day. It's moving, and it's a constant reminder that something is wrong. We've got to help. And about a week or two before 9/11, every time that time of the year comes around, like many people, I'm not alone. I start to, I get a little disenchanted, lost, and retracing every minute of my day, of what took place that day and stuff. And then it just occurred to me that I now own a restaurant, and I can do something very simple. I called it Eat for a Cause. And all I was asking people is to come to our restaurant and just eat. And I was going to write the check. I was taking a percentage of the proceeds and sending them off to John's Foundation. And it was a lot bigger than I ever thought it would be. I had reservations for about 140 people. I had over 350 people show up. And now we've raised over $11,000. John, I think you're going to be closer to 13 when it's all said and done, because I know about some other things that are going on. And when I told John, I said, I'm trying to raise $2,000 for you, John. It's best, and now here we are talking about 11,000 plus. And it just, now it became, it filled a big void in my life to try and do something, because I didn't have a means to do it. John has his means. He has his foundation. He has his connections. He's talking to people. I'm just this lone guy out here in Colorado. What can I do? Create awareness, and now look at us. Now here we are, talking about this on radio.
Yeah. Well, and this kind of brings me to my next question. So, John, if people are wanting to get involved and wanting to help, what are some of the best ways that they can help you?
Well, they can go to fealgoodfoundation.com, F-E-A-L, goodfoundation.com, all one word. My home phone number is on the website for the last 12 years. People call me at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. It's comical because we are an all-volunteer organization. And once in a while I'll get an intern or somebody that has to do community hours. But I answer my own phone 99% of the time, and they're like, oh, I can't believe I'm speaking to John Feal. But my office is in my house. I have no overhead. And everything starts from my office in my house and gets sent to my board members, who are all affected by 9/11. To be a Feel Good Foundation board member, you have to be affected by 9/11. You have to know what it is to suffer to be able to help somebody else in that capacity. And these men and women that I took, to give them something to do, like Joe was just talking about, makes them feel like they're being useful and they're making a difference in their fraternity, in their 9/11 community.
Oh, yeah. I think it would make anyone feel connected and like they're able to contribute and to help this discussion along, because you're not even done with this discussion. You had some great milestones hit last year with certain laws that were passed, right?
Well, yes. The James Ajoga Health and Compensation Act, I guess, made me semi-famous, and also with the help of John Stewart, who became a good friend of mine, who I've done a lot of work outside of the 9/11 community with. But, you know, when the bill got passed in 2010 and then got renewed in 2015, and everybody jumped up and hugged and cried and patted each other on the back, in 2010, the first words out of my mouth was, "That's great, we got more work to do." And in 2015, the words out of my mouth was, you know, because we had 75 years of free health care, I said, no, we have 75 years to get it right. So we're still in the process, 73 years out now, to get it right. And there's still so many moving parts that have to be fixed. And there's so many issues that are being corrected. And, you know, on the VCF, the compensation part, we only got 5 years. That expires in 2020. That means in 2019, we have to start the process of going back to Congress and taking the fight to them again. And listen, I'm 9-0. I've had 9 pieces of legislation thrown on my lap, and I've passed every one of them. So it doesn't matter who controls the White House, who's in charge of Congress, or who's in charge of the Senate. They're going to get a fist fight when John Feal comes in.
That I don't doubt.
You have your mohawk, John?
Yeah.
Well, and Dina, and so you know, part of the reason for me interviewing you as well is to see what we can do to support and back the Feel Good Foundation. I think, you know, I'm you know, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I really want to be a supporter of what it is that you're doing. I think there needs to be more discussion. I was looking at some of the stats that you had on one of the videos that I was watching, talking about by 2020, more people will die from 9/11 illnesses than the people that actually died in 9/11.
Well, that's a personal prediction, but I've never been wrong on any of my predictions. And I don't say that to brag. It's just I'm on the front lines of the 9/11. I'm embedded in the 9/11 community every day. I see this. I've been to 171 funerals. 9 of them I paid for because the families couldn't even afford to bury their loved one. So when I have almost 900 people on my wall a park that I built on Long Island for those who died since 9/11, there's 900 people on that wall. And I'm still vetting another 200 or 300 names. And then there are those that are out there that I just don't know where they are or if they passed away. So if somebody knows somebody that passed away from a 9/11 related illness, please contact me. I will vet them, and if they meet our criteria, we'll put them on a wall. But if we go at the pace where we're going now, we're going to outnumber those who died on that day by 2020.
Yeah, I mean, you would know. You're definitely in the trenches with this and working with everything that's going on. And I know, you know, that it's also been said that there, you know, with the responders from 9/11, there are cancers and other related illnesses that doctors just have never seen that are showing up.
Well, you know, any cancer is sad, and any cancer is devastating when the doctor says you have cancer. But when you're diagnosed with prostate cancer and die 9 or 10 days later, these cancers are aggressive. These cancers are, take your normal cancer and then put it on steroids. You know, no scientist and no doctor went to school for 9/11. It's unprecedented. So when we were walking the halls of Congress and saying 9/11 made us sick because the exhaustion through the nose, mouth, and skin again, they told us we were crazy. But when you see these people dropping dead after being diagnosed a week later or 3 months later, we knew there was something wrong. When all of these people now have pulmonary fibrosis or upper and lower restrictive airway diseases and all of these other illnesses, it's devastating. You know, the average age of the 9/11 responder was 39 years old on 9/11. The average age now is 55, 56 years old. Just getting old sucks. I mean, it hurts.
Yeah.
Right? Right? I mean, for all of us. I mean, I'm going to be 51. Joe's probably 51, 50. You know? Now, add these debilitating, life-altering diseases, and it's that much harder for these men and women, uniform and non-uniform, to function on a daily basis, let alone see the next day. And that's what everybody's doing right now. We're all fighting to see the next day. And when I do these posts on Facebook, I say the devil took these men and women, the devil and his demons, and I consider 9/11 cancer the devil. And it's attacking these men and women with a vengeance that doesn't discriminate about your nationality, your religion, your political affiliation, and it's just taken really good Americans from us.
Well, and I really back the discussion, and there needs, as you're saying, there needs to be more discussion in regards to people being able to get through the screening process so that they can go ahead and, if they've been a responder, been in the area, that they can go ahead and at least know about the benefits that are available for them.
Even if you're not sick and you were there, you should get into the program, because God forbid you do get sick, you're already in the program. Don't do it for yourself. Do it for your family. Do it for your kids. Do it for your wife. Do it for your loved ones. But if you were down at ground zero, you're eligible to get into this program, and you would get a yearly physical. And that physical is head to toe, soup to nuts, chest x-ray, urine, blood work. And God forbid something happens to you, they already have that information. Up until 2010, the program wasn't that great. There was no cancer added. We had a fight after the bill got passed. A year later, we got cancer added to the bill. And they only started with 4 cancers. Now there's 68 cancers added to the bill. That's because of persistence and hard work and getting in their face that we saw these numbers and these statistics. But they used to just give us an aspirin, smack us on the ass and say, we'll see you in 6 months. Now they're using preventive medicine. What a concept. Now they're paying for our medications, our prescriptions, our surgeries. All of this stuff is now covered under the James Sedroga Health and Compensation Act. We're now fighting to get more illnesses added, like autoimmune or neuropathy. And these things will get added. But this is the federal government, and it's a slow-moving process. But in the process of that, more and more people are getting sicker and dying because some of these illnesses aren't added. Hence why I seem a little cranky.
Well, that's okay. I think it's good cause to be cranky,
I can tell you, John, as a recipient of that care, they not only do that examination that you had described, but they ask you, oh my gosh, there must be over 100 questions.
Sure.
Health questions, this, that, does this take, does this, it is a online process, and you go through it every year. You mentioned one thing, anything, as will ask you have any problems breathing, or you have any problems, and if you answer yes, very rapidly you get a phone call, and very rapidly they're expediting you to a specialist. Mm-hmm. It's no joke, and then they very quickly assess whether they believe it is a 9/11 related illness or not. But it is, I find it quite impressive. Although I understand the bureaucracy that you had gone through, but as a recipient of that care, it's pretty expeditious. I'm amazed.
Look at the big picture. All of this data that they've now collected. And Joe, I hate to call you a guinea pig, but you're a guinea pig, as am I, because I'm in the program. The data they collected is now being used, God forbid there's another catastrophic event. Whether it's man-made or terrorist or Mother Nature, they can take the data now from an environmental disaster, which 9/11 was. It was a toxic disaster that no one's ever witnessed before. And now they can use it, God forbid it ever happens again. And they hopefully do not repeat the same mistake they made the first time. But that's what all of this data collecting is really for.
Well, let's say someone wants to go through this screening process, because it sounds like for most people the number one thing that probably comes up in their mind is, this sounds expensive. How much is this going to cost?
It's going to cost you all of about free.
Oh, my goodness.
All right. Yeah. So here's the thing.
They never ask you a penny.
If you live outside of the tri-state area, it's called the National 9/11 Program. That is run by LHI, Logistics Health Incorporated. They're located in Wisconsin. LHI was founded by Tommy Thompson, the former governor of Wisconsin and the former Secretary of Health under George Bush. LHI, you would get enrolled through them, and NIOSH, who administrates the World Trade Center Health Program and the National 9/11 Program, approves everything that LHI would do or disapproves. Then they would find a doctor in your nearest town. Whether it's a 10-minute drive or an hour drive, you would get the same treatment somebody else is getting in New York or New Jersey or Connecticut.
My goodness. I think for a lot of people that might have been something that held them back. What great information, They don't have to worry about the cost. They can, go and get checked and get screened.
And again, anybody can contact me, and I walk them through the process. And here's the thing: not only when they call me and they get the information from me, I am now their BFF. Because moving forward, if anybody gives them a hard time, if they run into an obstacle or a roadblock, I am now their personal bodyguard. And whoever gives them a hard time gets my foot in their ass.
I'm sure, especially if it's a political bet, right?
Well, again, you're talking about a government-run agency, and this is intimate for me. This is all about personal perseverance for myself and for those 16 years later. So a lot of people are confused, lost, scared, and I hold their hand through the process, and I take it personally because I'm not only putting my name on it, I'm putting my brand on it. And I've worked hard for that, and I'm never going to do anything to jeopardize that. So if I go out of my way to help somebody, I'm going out of my way 100% from the starting line to the finish line to make sure that that person got that help that I promised they were going to get.
Well, I'm sure with all the work that you've done and continue to do with this, you probably know a lot of people within these government agencies that you can talk with them and be able to make things happen in just a greater capacity than just someone going through and punching papers, you know?
Every government agency that's involved in the James Droga Health and Compensation Act, I have on speed dial. Mm-hmm. And when I say speed dial, I don't write down phone numbers. They're all on the top of my head. And if there's an issue, that person gets a phone call, and they know I'm not calling them to go golf and to drink a beer because I don't drink. I'm calling them because there's an issue with somebody they're supposed to be helping.
Now, if someone, let's say there's a fire station that deployed, maybe like in California, they deployed firefighters out for 9/11, or maybe any kind of organization.
505 people from California are in the program.
No. I mean, do you go out to different organizations and different groups if they request for you to come out and speak?
Yes, ma'am.
So you go anywhere?
Yes, ma'am.
Anywhere.
Yes,
That's
ma'am.
awesome.
Why wouldn't I?
I know. I mean, but I think it's good for people to know that if they want you to come and talk to their group, maybe it could be like a Red Cross group where they had volunteers that were out or whatever. You know.
And there are a lot of Red Cross volunteers in the program from across the country.
Yeah.
I bet.
I could imagine.
Keep in mind, there was a large contingent of volunteers and supporters, and Joe will tell you this. When you walked off the pile, it looked like the world's largest flea market. And there were people there washing our eyes out or feeding us or giving us new work boots. Or, you stepped on the steel, your work boots melted. So people were changing work boots and work gloves and work clothes on a daily basis. Those people themselves got sick because they were right there in the mushroom of toxic, so nobody was wearing a mask. And again, we ate there. We slept there. We cried there. We went to the bathroom there. We were exposed pretty much everywhere.
Of course.
I think you're touching on something. So a lot of times we think of first responders as firefighters and police officers. This goes way beyond that definition. It is a very broad definition from anybody who is handing out bottled water to, something very technical, rescue police-wise, or it encompasses a very broad population of people who participated in that. So many.
There was 350 search dogs. There was 350 comfort dogs. We were asked to play dead on the pile so a dog could find us because the dogs were getting depressed.
Oh, my goodness. I lived in California during the time of 9/11, and it was heartbreaking to watch. And at that time, I wanted to help and do something. I couldn't back then, but I can now. So I think
I'm a strong believer. It's never too late to help, and I hate to cliche that, but we're on the cusp of a generation-long illness that's only getting worse. The next wave of cancers has not even come yet because asbestos cancer takes 20-25 years to manifest. And again, personal prediction: a third a third of the 9/11 fraternity community, however you want to label them, will get asbestos cancer. And I don't say that lightly because that could be me. But that's how many people will get asbestos cancer.
Wow. It's staggering, and there's no way that people could have been in that environment and not have been exposed to toxins. There's just no way,
Oh, you're singing to the choir. This is part of my daily rhetoric. Hence why it's so important if you were there and you're not sick yet, don't think you're not going to get sick. It's just a matter I start off like Monday night when I put 20 people in the program from Harrison Fire Department. Who here has a runny nose? Who here has GERD? Acid reflux and GERD. These are common illnesses that start with why you should be in the World Trade Center Health Program. Sleep apnea. Many people that were down at Ground Zero now have sleep apnea, and they start with all of these illnesses, and then they find all of those underlying illnesses that are there that John Smith, the guy from Oklahoma or Colorado, didn't know why he had.
Yeah.
Hence why you go into the program, you get that 2 or 3 hour physical, and you have a better understanding. But I understand people's reluctancy because, they don't want their information out there. Here's the thing. Congress wrote this bill. The way it's written, because we helped negotiate it, is that this is private 100%. That's why we have HIPAA laws. Nobody gets your information unless you want somebody to have your information. This is all private. So a cop who is in the program doesn't want his guns taken away because he was diagnosed with post-traumatic. Not the case. The police department would never know unless you want that information shared. That's how private this is.
And I think that's encouraging for a lot of people because they can start to, get some medical treatment for the things that they know honestly that are really bothering them, and just haven't been able to do it because they're afraid of what some of the consequences are. Like
Joe will tell you, those of us who work on the pile, these were macho, burly men with mustaches the size of poodles and tattoos and just big, burly men. Guys in the fire department, police department, construction workers. These guys, people always ask me what I'll remember from my 5 days there at Ground Zero before I got hurt. And I'm going to remember grown men that look like Vikings that were hugging each other and crying. That's what stands out to me. But these are the same men that were reluctant to go into the program because they didn't think they were sick. Now many of them have passed, but many of them are deathly ill because they took their sweet-ass time getting into the program. And I'm trying to humanize this, and I'm trying to scare the crap out of people, if they're listening, to get into the program. It's not too late to get the help that you need.
You touched on something, John, that's really true, because I'm kind of part of the fire department community, and when I tell them that I'm in the program and they've diagnosed me with certain things, they look at me like I'm not as macho because there's a lot of people out there who are fighting not to get into that program.
Of course.
I don't know how else to describe it because they feel like it's a sign of weakness or something. Because again, going back to the Viking mentality and
once you get in the program, then it's then you have to look at these might be some things that I have.
And some of them I'm talking about that I don't see them as often as I used to. I could tell that they have issues that are common from 9/11, and they're fighting getting the help.
It just seems like, in my experience in the wonderful first responders that I've come in contact with, and people like how both you and John are describing. I mean, when they're out there helping people, thinking of themselves is kind of the last thing they think of.
That's exactly I think what's going through their
mind. When people call me and they say you don't know what I'm going through, and I do because I'm like the poster child for every time they do something new, I throw myself on the front of the line and say do it to me first. But I was diagnosed by 4 doctors with post-traumatic on top of losing my foot. I have not taken a pill for anything since 2005. I refuse to take a pill because I want that edge. I want to be cranky. I want to be angry. It's my motivation. I turn it into positive energy. But I have that chip on my shoulder because I see so many people suffering. And that, after 39, 40 surgeries, that's not for everybody. Trust me. I'm in pain, but I'm used to it. And that's how I live my life. But I was diagnosed with acid reflux and GERD, and I was taking Nexium and Protonics. But I learned that the side effects of that are not good, so I took apple cider vinegar. But all of those medications I was taking for my post-traumatic, it dumbed me down. It made me a boring person. I wanted to be able to fight. And again, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Before 9/11, I think I cried 4 times in my life. Since 9/11, I cry at a commercial. It could be a commercial with a kid riding a bike, and I'll cry. And there's nothing to be embarrassed about.
Marianne got me crying at the restaurant that night.
Oh, God, you're going to make me cry just thinking about it.
It was,
yeah.
It was quite an emotional event, and I'm so glad that I did it. Marianne, just like you, 16 years, you were trying to figure out how can I make a difference, how can I contribute, and there it was. There was my opening, just like your opening is happening right now.
Yeah. It's just, I think, coming to a realization that there's a whole group of people that have been affected by 9/11 that we haven't even, as a society, helped is heartbreaking. Number one, and then on top of that, to have the realization that, gosh, I've got to get involved. I got to do something because it seems wrong not to do anything.
My days are spent on the phone listening, and then when I'm done absorbing everything, then I have to spew out that rhetoric. That's just the way I tick.
Oh, yeah.
So listening to Joe and his personal story and trying to make some sort of amends for what he did and feel like he didn't do his job 16 years later. He's done his job. He survived. And that's a lot more than most people have done. The old saying, and it's usually passed down through generational advice that, from an older person, they think they're giving you some golden tip. They always say, you only live once. That's not the case. You only die once. You live every day. And that's how I choose to live my life, live every day. And try, when I die, man, I don't want my tombstone to say John Feal, date of birth and date of passing. I want it to say he tried, and let everybody guess who's buried there. Yeah, and that's in my will. They can't change that. Mm-hmm. It's legally binding. But I every day I wake up, I see a half a foot. That's the first thing I see when I wake up, and that's enough motivation to know that there are people worse off than me because they have these invisible diseases that are taking them from their families and their friends. How can you not get motivated?
Well, and Joe, I kind of did interrupt you a little bit there, and we were talking about just being at the restaurant, and when you were talking about your experiences of 9/11, and I mean, it was heartbreaking to hear, but also healing in some way to have that discussion.
It was, and you were at the table with that one person. He asked me a very deep question. Said, "What do you wish for?" I don't know if you recall that.
Yes, I do.
And I'm no different than John and thousands of first responders. For all of us, it felt like a very unsuccessful recovery effort because we weren't able to really save people. It seemed futile, and we all walk around with this gaping hole in our chest, like we tried and it didn't work, and it's just human nature to feel that way. Mm-hmm. Well, here I was in that restaurant and looking around, and 350 people on a Monday night are having a blast, and we're raising money and bringing awareness to something. Well, my answer was I was looking for closure. I got my closure that night. I realized I finally, 16 years later, was able to turn this negative cross I've been carrying into something positive.
I disagree.
Wow.
I disagree that you got your closure. And I don't say that because I don't believe you. I say that because it was a quick fix. Because you got another anniversary next year. And you got another anniversary. you got another anniversary. You know, people talk about closure, and we use that word freely. You know, 9/11 is not a scar; it's a scab, and that's a scab that keeps peeling off every anniversary. That week before, that month before, the week after, and that month after. Or if you lost a loved one, it's on the anniversary or on that birthday. That's a scar that can never heal. That's why I call it a scab. So Joe did something noble and outstanding this year, which is forever grateful. But personally, Joe is still going to suffer from his 9/11 related illnesses and his demons that he saw there. So, listen, that was medication. That was much needed for you.
To your point, John, now I've got something to look forward to next 9/11. And now I'm going to do it again.
There you go.
We're going to keep this process moving as long as I can and keep the fight moving. And now I'm filling that gap in my chest. You know, and I'm just fortunate to have an avenue to do that. So many don't.
Yeah. Well, and I love how you put, you know, Joe, how basically you're able to turn it for something good, kind of, you know, like what John's done. You know, here you're supporting this. You open your restaurant up, and you have where people can go ahead and be part of something bigger than themselves for one night. You know.
And you're doing it right now, Marianne, by just bringing more awareness. So it's a great thing.
Well, Mary,
we get started with you guys.
So, like a lot of things in life, everything starts with a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And some conversations people just don't want to have because they're hard to bear or they're hard to listen to, and you know they're afraid to ask the right questions, or they beat around the bush and they don't want to upset you. But you know, intimate, personal conversations are needed when it comes to stuff like this, because you get to the root of Joe's problems, my problems, the 80,000 people in the World Trade Center Health Program. And again, Joe, go back to Joe. Joe said he found his closure, but I think Joe was just using a word that we use freely because there's really no closure. There's just and how can anybody in their right mind ask somebody to move on or get over it when they're dealing with this on a daily basis?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's so good when you're able to shift things and move them into a way that you feel like you're making an impact, like you are, John, you know? Because not everyone would do what you did. Some people would just say, you know what, you know, this has happened, you know, I'm you know, frustrated, I'm fed up, nothing's working, I can't get the support I want, and just call it a day, you know? But you didn't do that. You turned things around and made it happen.
Yeah. Well, because my greatest fear is failure. Failure rules my life. I will never fail those I fight for, and I'll never fail myself. Secondly, you know, when I started this, it wasn't sexy. When they said, you know, I went for a business license, and they're like, well, you need a name. I didn't even think about it when I was going down to the office to write it down on a piece of paper. They're like, you need a name. And then I was like, well, every organization has 9/11, and then when people think of 9/11, they think of the worst.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, oh, well, what's your last name? I said, Feal. He goes, call it Feel Good Foundation. I said, oh, what a concept, great.
That's actually super clever, by the way.
Yeah, and listen, while it's a good play on word and it's a good pun, I wasn't even prepared. You know, thank God I surrounded myself with smarter people than me. The only thing I brought to the table was my tenacity and the ability not to accept no when people were sick and dying. Other than that, I didn't bring my good looks, I could tell you that.
Well, you know, you definitely have, both of you are fighting for just such an amazing cause, and of course you joined.
I think Joe won good looking in high school, didn't you?
Yeah, no, it wasn't me. That was Dan, but that's okay.
Oh, he's better looking than our friend Dan. I hope Dan's listening to this.
So John and Joe, so where do you guys go from here? What's next? You know, with the Feel Good Foundation, what's happening next? And, you know, and Joe, I know you're having probably another event at your restaurant at some point. Love to know when that's happening because I'm going to be there.
Well, I plan on doing that on 9/11, so next year it'll be on a Tuesday instead of a Monday. And other people, like I'm still noodling around what we're going to do, because I've gotten a lot of great feedback from customers, making it a week-long thing rather than a one-day thing. You know, so.
I would
but
totally
I'm
agree with that, to be honest.
Yeah, and it was really easy for me to do. Like I said, it was just eat for a cause. I have a restaurant. I have everything there. The deliverable is there. So it was just getting the community to come together and just have fun. So it was rather easy to put together. And I never dreamed that we would have made such an impact for John and his foundation. I had told John in the beginning that my goal was $2,000, and look what we raised.
No, I don't. And again, while that's appreciated, it wasn't John and his foundation. I think it was the 9/11 community, and I think it was the information that's being shared, especially that night and those few days at the restaurant, and now on this radio interview. That conversation has started, that dialogue and that rhetoric that's now going to once the windshield cracks, it spiders. And now that fight is to more people, and now more people will know what's going on, and more people can get involved. And again, the donations are gravy. It's the information getting out there to that guy in the nooks and crannies of the United States that might not know what's available to him that he's going to get.
John, like it or not, you are the symbol and symbolic to everything that we're doing. So it's about you and your foundation. You don't want to accept that? That's okay.
I could feel the cringe from here, okay? Because I know, with both of you guys, I mean, you guys are heroes in my book, and most heroes don't want to be, acknowledged personally. There's that bigger, the Feel Good Foundation is, where they'd like the accolades and acknowledgement to go to. So I get it. So what other things do we need to get past? What other things are happening with the Feel Good Foundation?
Well, listen, every day we're helping people. It's every day. It's not just on Monday through Friday, Saturdays and Sundays. It's every day there's an issue in the 9/11 community that needs to be corrected, whether putting somebody in a program, helping somebody with paperwork, making sure that somebody can get to a chemotherapy appointment, making sure that somebody has food on their table, making sure that while somebody's waiting for their compensation award, that they can at least wait and get there until that money arrives. Making sure that somebody who's in the program, that their illnesses get certified. Just so many things are going on. And then, legislation is always a passion of mine. I'm going to start working on a new bill that will help those that fall under the nicest pension in New York that are getting screwed. The governor signed a bill, Governor Cuomo signed a bill on September 11th from a bill that I got passed in June that's going to help those who worked for one entity on 9/11 and went to another entity after that to better their lives. And now that will cover the gap between those jobs. There's a lot more work to do. And then, we have to start prepping in 2019 for 2020 when we take the fight back to Congress, which I can't wait because I'm going to put on my bib because I'm drooling.
Get ready for that one, right?
Well, I'm not going to lie to you. I have a disdain, and I'm utterly repulsed. And listen, not all elected officials are bad people.
No.
I believe everybody has the right intentions when they run, but when they get to their state capital or to Washington D.C., they get caught up in a system that changes their behavior and the way they do business. And I can tell you that Colorado and the governor and the senators and the congressmen in Colorado were great to work with. They were a pleasure. They were one of the states that actually got behind us. So there's a lot of work to be done, and there's so many moving parts to this. And sadly, there's going to be a lot of more funerals that take up my time. And then, and then there's a park that I built that always needs to be maintained.
Wow.
So there was another important component to the bill that Cuomo passed. The part that caught my eye the most was that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but at least in the state of New York, you're no longer allowed to. It's no. I'm going to say this wrong. You're no longer allowed to. You don't have to use your sick time and vacation time to get help.
Correct. the bill that he signs, really quick, if Joe worked for the FDNY on 9/11, but he didn't get sick, but then he went and worked for the Suffolk County Police Department in 2005, and then all of a sudden he got cancer. Here's the problem. Before this bill got signed, the FDNY were like, well, you don't work for us anymore. We can't help you. And Suffolk County Police is like, well, you weren't with us on 9/11, so we can't help you. So Joe's using up all his sick time, his vacation days. People are donating their vacation days to him and their sick time. Now, Joe will have that covered. But more importantly, if Joe would have passed away from his 9/11 related illness, his family wouldn't have got anything because there'd be no death benefits because both entities disowned him. Now, the first one or the second one will have to honor those death benefits. So there was a lot of work, but we got that bill passed, and there wasn't one no vote. But I think everybody was scared of me.
Well, John, keep scaring them. That's all I can say. This is something that we want to make sure that they pay attention to, and I'm going to be following this, and you've got the support of my show. We're going to be making sure that people know about your foundation and where they can donate, because as it grows, I'm sure you're going to need more donations as time goes on, to help people with getting to their cancer treatments and different things. So just really appreciate that. And Joe, next time your restaurant has its, fundraiser for this, I'm going to be involved, and I'll make my reservations this time well in advance instead of just dropping in with a bunch of people.
That's much appreciated.
Well, Joe and John, thank you both so much for taking the time to be on the show today.
Thank you for having me, and Joe, thank you for being who you are.
Thank you, John. It is an absolute pleasure to help, and thank you, Marianne.
Thank you both so much for taking the time to be on the show. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you, and I applaud you both for the great work that you're doing. If anyone would like to learn more about the Feel Good Foundation, you can visit fealgoodfoundation.com, and that's spelled Feal goodfoundation.com. And you can learn more about how to donate and be involved. And also, if you are a responder or a first responder during 9/11, it'll give you information there on where you can go and start the process to start to be monitored for care. And if you'd like to go to one of my favorite restaurants here in Colorado, I highly suggest Pino's Italian Kitchen and Bar. That's Joe's restaurant. You can visit the website, pinositaliankitchenbar.com. So that's the end of our time here today. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.